Tonight on The Wrap, the police search of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's former home continues, but where will the investigation go next? Well, the focus now turns to those who worked for Andrew, with calls for his former protection officers to come forward with information.
It's key to interview some of these officers who travelled with him extensively for years. It's inconceivable to me, I'm sad to say, that nobody saw anything.
Donald Trump bumps up his tariffs on the world again to 15% as he blasts what he called the anti-American decision by the Supreme Court on his tariff regime. Heartbreak for Team GB at the Winter Olympics as they lose to Canada in the men's curling final. And Ireland shatter England's Six Nations hopes after a record win in Twickenham. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Associate Political Editor of the Daily Telegraph, Tony Diver, and journalist and author Rachel Shabby. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, where Andrew is, unsurprisingly, still making the headlines. Hello there, a very good evening. Tony Diver and Rachel Shabby, welcome to both of you. We start tonight with the police's ongoing investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as they continue to search his former home, Royal Lodge. Let's get a thought from Tony and Rachel. The police investigation continues. It's been a remarkable few days.
It's been incredible and it's made the news globally, albeit that this is Andrew's arrest under suspicion of wrongdoing in public office. One cannot help but think about the allegations around sexual abuse, and one cannot help but think of all the victims of Epstein and more widely. And I think about Virginia Giuffre, who set so much of this in motion, and I feel sad that she's not around to have seen this week.
We've heard a lot from her siblings, haven't we, Tony?
Well, what shocks me about this story is the sheer number of new claims and allegations that come out every single day, ranging from all aspects of royal life, it seems, are now being scrutinised. And I wonder how they can all possibly be investigated. We know the police investigation is very narrow. But now, as we'll see in tomorrow's papers, there are calls for it to be investigated in all sorts of new ways. And I think we're going to be looking at this story for a very long time. Yeah, we'll discuss more shortly. Well, detectives are now asking his former close protection officers to come forward with information that could be relevant to their investigation. Adele Robinson has our first report tonight.
Day 3 of the investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And behind the gates of Royal Lodge, his former residence, police searches continue. Days on, still an almost unbelievable sight on a royal property, and activity expected to last here until Monday. The Metropolitan Police has also said it's contacting officers who protected Andrew over the years. They may well have important information, says the former head of Royal Protection.
It's key to interview some of these officers who travelled with him extensively for years. Many of them had been with him for years, and they would have gone to all the 5 residents that we've been talking about in the United States, Virgin Islands, New Mexico, and Florida. So it's inconceivable to me, I'm sad to say, that nobody saw anything.
Andrew, who has always strenuously denied all allegations, was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Over accusations he sent confidential documents to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein when he was a trade envoy. Andrew was stripped of his royal titles last year, with criticism now, too, over the speed of the palace's response.
I would say they've acted a little late, frankly. Where have they been for the last, 20 years in one sense? They should have done it years ago. I understand, possibly as a family, why you wouldn't want to wash your dirt in public, but there was no internal inquiry as far as I know, and if there was, where was it? Who did it? So, as I say, there are questions, big questions of the palace, unfortunately.
Separately, 9 UK forces are considering their own investigations after the release of 3 million documents in the Epstein files. Andrew, meanwhile, hasn't been seen since this photograph. After 11 hours of questioning, he left police custody, released under investigation. a significant moment for the royal family, captured for all the wrong reasons, with Andrew's story far from over.
And Adele has joined us here in the studio. Adele, it's been an extraordinary week, and I guess if the royal family hoped things would quieten down after we saw those pictures of Andrew going to be questioned by police, well, they will be disappointed, because every single front page is featuring this heavily.
Yeah, I mean, there clearly has been a real desire from the palace to try to draw a line between this crisis, basically, is what it is, and the wider monarchy. But it's becoming a story that is not just about Andrew now. It's about institutional judgments, if you like, and what decisions were made by the palace over a number of years. And the questions that are arising inevitably are going to focus, as they have started to in some of the papers and the reporting just there, why it's taken so long for the palace to act. Was there an internal inquiry? It's thought perhaps not, according to Dave Davis there. And if not, why not? The palace, of course, is in a difficult place, aren't they? Andrew's always denied strenuously these allegations. There've never been any police charges, and until now, he's never been questioned under caution. But those releases of the Epstein files marked an escalation, a need for escalation, if you like, from the palace in measures taken by the royal family. Let's not forget, the arrest of Andrew and his release is the first time, and we can't understate this, in modern royal history, that a senior royal has been taken into police custody. And so it's no wonder the headlines are still including, every page, is it, of the newspapers are including his story, his face, the photo, which is already haunting the royal family, and it will haunt them for years to come. That image of him slumped in the back of a car there, it's everywhere. It's across the front pages, it's on websites, it's across global newspapers. The signs here as well are that this investigation is not narrowing down, it's actually widening. So while those police searches are going on, police are also trying to speak to close protection officers of Andrew. So this is broadening out. So yes, they're leading tomorrow's papers. They're probably going to be leading for a number of days into next week as well. The palace strategy really to try and stay on the front foot isn't working, despite what King Charles has said about letting the law take its course, very much stressing cooperation with authorities, but refusing to comment any further because they can't. They're in a difficult position. It's impossible for them to stay on the front foot now, because this is not just another royal scandal. There's the political dimension as well, isn't there, of ministers openly discussing legislation to remove him from succession. You know, this is a moment, I think, without precedent in modern royal history, and one that the palace simply cannot contain. Yeah.
Adele, thank you. You mentioned that photograph. Let's have a look at the front of the Observer. Nowhere to hide, it says Mountbatten, Windsor and monarchy in peril. I mean, they've zoomed right in on his eyes. It is a stark image, Rachel, isn't it? Just sum up where we are tonight.
It is a really stark image, and I think it's absolutely right. It's almost like, you know, pulling at a thread and then the whole garment unravels. And that's what it feels like a little bit with the royal family, because, of course, more and more information is going to come to light now. We're only at the tip of the iceberg with the Epstein files, not just the ones the ranch currently released, but the other 2 million plus that have yet to be released. And there's just going to be more and more and more information. And there's going to be more and more people coming out, as we've seen all day, as we've seen with some of these front pages with, you know, former prime ministers getting involved. It is just going to be very hard for the royal family. There's going to be all kinds of questions about what they knew and when they knew it and why they've been so uninvolved up until now. And the bigger question throughout this all the time is why there was so much silence, this complicity of silence around the rape and abuse of women and girls. Why was it OK for so long? Why did so many people put up with it for so long? These are questions that aren't just about the royal family and about politicians and about elites, but they actually are about wider societies, and they really do shame and damn us all. all.
Tony, what about this constant discussion about the line of succession? Andrew is 8th in line to the throne. He is never going to be king. There is never going to be a situation where he ends up as king. Is this a sort of waste of everyone's time talking about this, and eventually, potentially, a waste of Parliament's time?
Well, no, I don't think it is. It's symbolic, obviously. As you say, is very unlikely ever to become king. But the royal family is all about symbolism. It's all about, every time we look at a royal story, every time we look at, any time the royals do anything, look at the state opening of Parliament, you know, the King's speech, these are all things that are about symbolism, they're about power, they're about who has authority in our country. And so, yes, it's a symbolic act to remove him from the line of succession, but I think it also sends a message. I think that's an important thing to do. And I think if you look at this story over, the long period of time that it's been running, 5, 10 years or so, you see that each time new allegations come out, each time there is a new story. The Virginia Giuffre story that you mentioned, of course, was the biggest one for Andrew. Another bit of his authority within the royal family is chipped away, and he is now not Prince Andrew, he's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and that's a significant thing as well. His name has been changed, his entire identity has been removed. And that's happened in a kind of piecemeal way. It's not happened all in one go. And if this is the last thing, and it's significant, I think, that it has to be done by Parliament, by the government, it has to be brought forward in a bill.
Just tell me about your story on the front of the... I'll get a final thought from you in a moment, Rachel, but just you can plug your own story. Why not? Your own headline on this. Well,
we knew that Gordon Brown this week had submitted a dossier of evidence to the police, 6 police forces, and tomorrow's paper we're revealing what was in that pack, that memo that he sent. The most significant thing is that he is calling for a full police investigation into Andrew's time as a trade envoy when he was on the books working for the government, and what he was doing with flying around the world in private jets or RAF charter flights. He's raising concerns that he may have used those trips to meet Jeffrey Epstein, or that the trips that he was going on, he may have been using that to harvest information that he was later sharing with Epstein. That, of course, is highly pertinent to the investigation that Thames Valley Police are now doing into misconduct in a public office.
Yeah, 9 UK forces, I think, now conducting their own investigations or considering doing that.
Yeah, because it's so widespread. This network is so wide. The number of people involved is so wide and the implications are so deep. I think one of the things that, we talk about things that are symbolic. Of course, the arrest under suspicion of the former prince is very symbolic in terms of what it says about the royal family. But it's hugely symbolic in terms of, needing to see justice be done. And so far, there hasn't really been any, apart from with Ghislaine Maxwell, there hasn't really been anyone dragged to court and held accountable under the law for these appalling actions. And you do have to hope that these widespread and sustained police investigations actually do produce more justice under the law, and also that it extends to the US, where we've seen little to none of it so far.
It's you've heard us say this a lot, but it's worth saying once again. Andrew, of course, is always strenuously denied any wrongdoing. We'll return to this story a bit later in the programme. Our other main news tonight: it's only been a day since Donald Trump angrily announced 10% global tariffs, but he's already bumped them up to 15%. It's after the US Supreme Court struck down his previous policy, saying he didn't have the authority to put the tariffs in place. Well, that, of course, didn't sit well with the president, who said the judges should be ashamed of themselves. Take a look at this report from Rob Harris.
Frankly, disgrace to our nation, those justices.
He was already seething at the Supreme Court slapping down his tariffs.
I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth.
And even angrier the next morning, raising global duties on imported goods to 15%, from the 10% only just imposed on Friday night. Deploying emergency powers after his previous tariffs were deemed illegal, and stretching them to the limit, punishing the world for the court ruling. Trump attacking the ridiculous, poorly written and extraordinarily anti-American decision, so introducing the fully allowed and legally tested 15% level. Liberation Day last April was making political theatre out of launching a trade war.
This sent shockwaves through global economies when Trump introduced reciprocal tariffs, complaining about unfair trade practices. Now, Keir Starmer managed to secure favourable terms for the UK, negotiating the lowest rate of 10%. So on Friday, it looked like the status quo. But less than 24 hours later, is Britain worse off? Trump's social post mentioned no exemptions for the 15% levy being imposed across the board. So did flattering Trump handing him a second state visit achieve nothing? But some countries will be cautiously celebrating. Brazil has been among those hardest hit with their 50% tariffs the steepest, imposed punitively as retribution for the prosecution of right-wing ally, the former President Jair Bolsonaro. While some products were always exempted, tariffs dropping to 15% leaves Brazil better off for 150 days at least. That's how long the flat 15% import surcharges can be levied once they come into effect from Tuesday.
For world leaders unsettled by Trump's volatility, creating policy on the hoof, presidential powers being curbed is being welcomed.
First, I think this invites everyone to reflect. It's not bad to have a Supreme Court and therefore the rule of law. For those who think Supreme Courts create problems in political life, a Supreme Court looked at the Constitution and said, this is not in line with the Constitution. Now everyone says it's great. It's good to have checks and balances in democracies.
There is now a question of what happens to the $133 billion collected by the government unlawfully from import taxes. American companies have started filing lawsuits. Expect compensation claims to also come from those importing to the US. Thousands of British businesses could be eligible for cash.
We want the US government to cooperate and make sure that money is paid back to companies who should never have had to pay these tariffs in the first place, and that is done without recourse to expensive and laborious legal proceedings.
Consumers charged more will also want paying back. But what's more likely is being exposed to more turbulence in the global markets and paying the price, with uncertainty only growing as Trump rages and retaliates. Rob Harris, Sky News.
Well, the fallout from all of that is featuring heavily on the front pages, of course. Rachel and Tony here to discuss it. Rachel, why don't you kick things off? When I left the studio yesterday evening, it was 10%. When I came into work today, it was 15%. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, that's the thing. And I think the number of times they've been changed since so-called Liberation Day is something like 50 or 60 times. It's so chaotic. No one's got any idea what's going on. And, of course, as we keep hearing, uncertainty is terrible for the economy and for actually economies worldwide. But actually, this move is not going to go down well with Trump's supporters. They really don't like this. And the last thing that he wants, presumably, is to have his own Republicans have to defend this, you know, going into midterms, an incredibly unpopular thing. Now it's all people are going to talk about. So it just seems like such a, I mean, obviously, go figure trying to analyse Trump's motives, but it does seem like a particularly self-defeating one.
What do you think it means for the UK? Because we came out of the whole tariff situation pretty well, didn't we, with 10% and then a lot of carve-out deals as well. We're now looking at 15%. What's the government's thinking, do you think, on this?
Well, I think the government, as they often are in situations involving Donald Trump, will be scrambling to work out exactly what this means for the UK. It is worth saying when the first raft of tariffs came in, they didn't apply to the UK for very long before they were then cancelled. You know, it does seem that we have some privilege with Trump in that we get a bit of preferential treatment. But that actually is the heart of the issue that the Supreme Court has with the tariffs. They're saying that this very wide range of different tariff rates, ranging from 10 to 50%, is part of the issue. And so perhaps Trump is going to have to use a flatter set of tariffs on different countries as a way of getting around that. But, you know, obviously it will have an impact for UK exporters. And if there are any retaliatory tariffs, especially by the EU, we could see sort of more instability in the global trade market, which is always bad for the bottom line, for households, for the cost of living crisis, given that so much of what we eat, drink, consume and buy comes from abroad. Yeah,
British Chambers of Commerce certainly saying that they're very concerned about this new tariff regime. And there's also the whole talk about refunds as well, isn't there? You You know, I mean, can we see... I mean, that's a bureaucratic nightmare, isn't it?
That's another complete hot mess, and we did hear reports of various countries, as soon as the Supreme Court announced, say, right then, let's go and get our refunds, let's put the claim in, and that is another layer of chaos. And, of course, you know, we were talking about the impact to cost of living and for people feeling it in the UK. In the US, they're feeling it as well, and, of course, that's what precipitated much of this, wasn't it? Was actual American companies feeling the impact of these tariffs and making appeals to the courts, which is what escalated it in this way.
Mm. Well, there's been lots of reaction, of course, politically from Donald Trump's tariff policy. It's been felt in the political domain, with the Lib Dems calling for the government to launch legal action. Let's have a listen.
Advice today to Keir Starmer is to sue Donald Trump for $100 billion for the damage he's caused to Scotland and our country.
Sir Ed Davies sort of channeling his President Trump there, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was. He's very angry about it. That is the Lib Dem strategy at the moment, though. The Lib Dem strategy is to get as angry as you possibly can about Trump and try and hoover up the anti-Trump vote in the UK, which is a pretty large group of people. I can't see that happening, to be honest. I don't think that fits with Keir Starmer's way of approaching the US, is to start suing them in the courts. Although, perhaps if he did, he would represent us.
Maybe. I mean, you know, we think back, don't we, to Keir Starmer in the White House and the sort of cozying up in the Oval Office and giving him the letter from the King, the state visit, all the rest of it. And now we're sort of back to not quite square one, but we're in a tricky position again.
Almost as though being obsequious to an authoritarian tyrant is a fool's errand, almost like he should have foreseen that it would have no effect whatsoever, and it might be better to try and work a way to circumvent a reliance on the US in the way that you can see other countries, Canada, start to do.
How do you think it'll affect the midterms? They're still a long way off, but we've seen plenty of Republicans come out, haven't we, and criticise this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this policy gets to the real heart of a conflict inside Trump. On the one hand, you've got Trump, the Make America Great Again, foreign policy hawk, hard on China, hard on cheap foreign goods coming in. On the other hand, you've got the Trump of the most recent election campaign, which is promising Americans cheaper goods, better services, more, no tax on tips. This really kind of like sort of populist, sort of money and pound in your pocket type approach. These things are a complete conflict at the moment, and I think Republican voters will start to wonder if they see their price of gas and the price of the food they're buying in the shops go up, as it inevitably will in this situation. Which side of Trump they're really getting under this administration.
It's going to be really interesting, isn't it, to see which direction the wind blows. Just a final thought, Rachel. I don't know if you saw the news conference yesterday where Donald Trump obviously gave his reaction, calling the Supreme Court a disgrace. I actually thought he looked deflated. He wasn't coming out firing on all cylinders as perhaps we were expecting. We're looking at the pictures now. They've changed the lighting. I don't know if you know this, but they've changed the lighting in the press room to make it a bit more subtle, a bit more moody. And, I mean, he was certainly moody himself as a result of this. But did you get that impression? I mean, this is so pivotal. The tariff regime to his economic policy is so important to him that to have the wind taken out of his sails like this, I genuinely don't think he could believe it.
But I think it was more like, because he's such an authoritarian, it was more like, how dare you defy me? Nobody defies me and gets away with it. And lo and behold, they don't. Because now we're dealing with this. Yeah, this is his response.
OK. All right, we're going to move on. Great Britain has claimed silver in the men's curling after being defeated by Canada at the Winter Olympics. Team GB was aiming for their first gold in men's curling since 1924. I've got a story about that, I'll tell you in a minute. They started out strong, were in control of the match and had opportunities, but Canada got the better of them and secured a 9-6 win to finish top of the podium. Sky Sports News correspondent Gareth Hughes has more from Cortina in Italy.
The focus for Team Moat, Bruce Moat, the skip, was gold. They came into this match against Canada. They had their challenges getting through the round-robin stage, but in curling, in Olympic curling, it is about peaking at the finale, at the conclusion, and winning those big games, those big moments. Tonight, against Canada, Team GB had their chances. They had, around the halfway stage, the opportunity in a few ends to grasp that control away from Canada, and they didn't quite do it. And then in the ninth end, the penultimate end, that's where Canada scored a 3. And that was the moment where you felt Canada not just in control, but they had one hand on that gold medal. And then, and as it transpired in the final end, Canada just kept that control. Those big shots and those big moments came off for them, and they are the gold medalists. For the Team GB, for the men's curlers, it's going to be bitterly disappointing for this team, Team Moab, because they won silver 4 years ago, meaning they lost out in that gold medal match. History has repeated itself, and for the third time in 4 editions of the Olympic Games, the men's curlers have lost out in that gold medal match and taken the silver medal. It's been 102 years since the men's curlers have won the gold medal in curling. The women, of course, won it in 2002 and 4 years ago in 2022 in Beijing. But for these 4 men, yes, they've won silver, but right now this is going to be raw. This is going to hurt, and that silver medal will not feel like very much at the moment. I'm sure in time, context and looking back, they will be very, very proud of their achievements. But they came to the Cortina Curling Centre behind me here with one thing in mind, and that was to take the gold medal. And unfortunately for them, it has not happened this evening, a silver.
Gareth Hughes reporting, very sad for Team GB missing out on gold in the curling, but silver still fantastic. You've been enjoying the Winter Olympics?
I love the Winter Olympics. I think it's so much more fun, actually, than the Summer Olympics. I love that all of the sports are basically sort of different ways of sliding around on ice. Curling, like, probably the least exhilarating way of doing it, in which you slide a piece of rock.
So all this high adrenaline sport, and then curling.
Yeah, but, you know, there's something quite British about that we're good at that one. We're good at the one boring sport in the Winter Olympics, but I think it's great. I've been watching loads of it.
Yeah, well, my story about the curling is that in 1924, when we won gold, 4 Scottish farmers in the winter used to curl on the frozen locks because they couldn't work because there was too much snow and ice. So they got really good at it. And they heard about the first Winter Olympics taking place in Chamonix, and for a laugh, they thought they'd enter. And these 4 burly Scottish farmers got the train from Edinburgh all the way to Chamonix, entered for a bit of a joke and something to do in the winter, and went and won gold. And that was the last time Team GB's men have won gold. But it's a great story. Have you been enjoying the Winter Olympics as well?
Yeah.
Does it sort of appeal to you?
It really does. I tuned in because so many people who don't usually watch sports were raving on about it. So I tuned in, and now I'm just fully locked in. And I love all the skating on ice things. I love the speed skating. And I was watching the relays the other day, and I just don't understand why that doesn't end in a big pile-up. Because all the teams are all in the ring, all at the same time, at speed, on these blades. And somehow they don't all crash into each other all the time. It's incredible. I loved watching it.
Yeah, it does add an extra element of excitement to watch, doesn't it, knowing that these people could be wiped out. But it has been great, and I think Team GB have really entered into the spirit of it. And Matt Weston, especially, winning 2 gold medals. He's like one of those annoying kids at school who is really good at every sport. You know, he's not just brilliant at this. He was really good at rugby. He played taekwondo, took part in taekwondo as well. But he came across as a brilliant sportsman, I thought. You know, his whole attitude to it was great.
Yeah, and I think all these people know that when you go to the Olympics, it's not like the national championships of whatever sport you're involved in. You know, you're a real ambassador for your country. And I think, you know, every interview you've seen with British Olympians this year has been fantastic. You see all the time that's gone into it, and you know, on a tricky wicket, basically doing stuff that we don't even have the ability to practice for in our country.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? When you think, you think about people like Matt Weston, who, I mean, obviously he spends a lot of time out in France and elsewhere, but he didn't grow up on snow like the Norwegians do or the French do. So it does add that extra element of difficulty.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, a lot of these people are training in you know, snow centres, snow sports centres that are kind of next to the big Tesco in your local town, and maybe they're, you know, lucky if you get a snowboard centre there, compared to the others who've literally, as you say, grown up every single day going out on the snow, going out on the ice. So I think it's a shame we obviously didn't win gold there on the curling, but any medal we get is a bonus.
We have got one more chance of a medal tomorrow. Team GB's Zoe Atkin eyeing the podium after she finished first in Thursday's qualifier in the free ski half pipe, that final tomorrow. So that'll be good. We'll be keeping our fingers crossed for her. You were talking to me earlier about the snowboarders. You've been quite taken by them.
Yeah, I just love their vibe. They're so, all the others are very serious and highly focused, and, the speed skaters are, I mean, all of them combine this incredible athleticism with skill and discipline, and there's something quite beautiful about it, like gymnasts or ballerinas. And the snowboarders are just like a completely different vibe. So it's quite interesting to see that they're all in the same thing. But I really like the fact that they are taking so many risks as well, and just pushing their field of sport. So each time you see an Olympics, the change is so dramatic. And a lot of the commentators about these Winter Olympics are saying the same thing, that in the last 4 years since Beijing, there's been such a huge spurt. And that is because of all these athletes constantly, pushing the realms of possibility.
Yeah, and the funding has helped as well, I think. And we'll be looking forward to France in 4 years' time. Yeah, it's been great. Well, coming up next on The Wrap, we're going to take a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Don't go away.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report, and this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back to The Wrap. Rachel and Tony still with us. Let's take a look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers. The Observer leads with the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the fallout for the monarchy. The Daily Mirror also leads with Andrew's arrest and the calls for an inquiry into the conspiracy of silence around Andrew's relationship with Epstein. And the front of tomorrow's Sunday People also reports on the demands for an inquiry by no other than the royal family's former head of protection. Sliding in The Sun, its headline states Parliament should investigate whether Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson have committed treason. Here's tomorrow's Sunday Telegraph saying that former PM Gordon Brown has demanded a police investigation into whether Andrew used taxpayer-funded jets and RAF bases to meet up with Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the Daily Star reporting on the comments from a former participant of the TV show SAS Who Dares Wins, calling Prince Andrew arrogant. OK, Tony and Rachel are here to discuss some of those front pages. Tony, why don't we start with the Sunday... I mean, they're all pretty much covering the same story, aren't they? But let's start with the Sunday Mirror. They have gone for who knew what and when, calling for an inquiry into a conspiracy of silence.
That's right, and this is kind of what we were saying earlier about Prince Andrew and this story, is that it just keeps getting wider and wider and deeper, and every new story you hear is about something different and new allegations being made. I mean, this is an interesting suggestion that there should be an inquiry, perhaps a judge-led inquiry, which would look at some of these issues. Of course, the police are currently running investigations. We think that there are 9 police forces that are currently at varying stages of either assessing claims or running a full investigation. So you can only assume that something like this would come a bit later, perhaps, and look at institutional issues, potentially, or the constitutional role of the monarchy, maybe, and the way that some of those stories have come about. Perhaps Andrew's role as a trade envoy and how that came about in 2001. But, yeah, I mean, certainly... if there was to be an inquiry, we'll be looking at this story for the next 5 years at least. So I think, if anything, this is a sign that the story's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Rachel?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I suspect, there will be a public appetite for an inquiry as well, just because there is so much discussed about this. And because it is, it is starting to unravel this whole thing of, especially with the royal family. And, of course, the former Prince Andrew has always denied everything, including, of course, to his own family. But it does now raise questions of exactly as this headline says, who knew what and when? How much did the royal family know? Why didn't they act sooner? Why didn't they put measures in place that came rather late? Why didn't that happen earlier? They haven't really said much about this at all, and that is their way, right? They don't say much about many things, but I think that convention may now be stretched to breaking point. I think a lot of people are going to have questions, and they're going to keep stopping at the royal family's front door. And eventually, something's going to have to change about this dynamic, about this relationship, and the conventions that surround it between the royal family and
of course,
the rest of us.
And it's not just our country, is it? You've got the whole of the Commonwealth as well. It was interesting hearing somebody on the radio today talking about the situation in Australia. They had a referendum on the royal family 25 years ago or so, and voted by far the majority to keep the royal family as it is. But you wonder if things will change, don't you? If maybe Commonwealth countries will think, well, actually, let's maybe distance ourselves.
Well, there already is an attempt to do that, isn't there? And some of the Caribbean countries in the Commonwealth are already saying that they don't want the royal family. Many of those same countries are calling for reparations from the UK.
Indeed.
So, yeah, I mean, it is an obvious point to make, but it is clearly true that this is a PR disaster for the royal family, and there have been previous crises of the monarchy where they've worried about the level of public support that there is in our country and others for them, and things like this just won't help. One other point that I would make on this is that I think what these stories show you, because there's no dispute that Andrew was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, that he spent time with Jeffrey Epstein, that element of the story is not denied. You see that the people within our royal family essentially still operate on a system of personal judgment of what to do and when and how to behave. They don't have the kinds of checks and balances that we have in our political system. Ministers are always complaining that they can't do things because the civil service won't let them, or there's guidance or law or whatever.
They do.
But royals don't have that. Royals can behave essentially as they want, and we rely on a system basically of consent and trust that they're going to do the right thing.
Self-preservation. They know that they have to adhere to certain standards, or should adhere to certain standards, or they might be out of a job. And maybe we're getting to that situation. Just going to. Well, I'll get that point in a moment, Rachel. Let's just bring in the front of the Sun. MP Parliament should decide if Andy and Mandy have committed treason, bringing Mandelson onto the front page as well. Sorry, Rachel.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean, it actually takes us to this nicely, which is, isn't that the point of this when it comes to the royal family, when it comes to politicians, when it comes to, rich and powerful men? Isn't that the point that there isn't there aren't constraints on their behaviour, that there aren't parliamentary conventions around their behaviour, that there aren't, self-regarding constraints around their behaviour, such as you just cited with the royal family. Those have not existed. Those have not operated across a wide range of people, across the political spectrum, across the Atlantic. That's precisely the point, that a certain kind of powerful man believes that those constraints do not apply to them. And they didn't apply to them for decades, and that would have carried on had it not been for the work of Virginia Giuffre and for others of Epstein's victims who tried for decades to bring our attention to this. And now we're all coming to a head with these files.
Yeah. Indeed. OK, let's move on and talk about the other big story of the day. Donald Trump hitting Britain and others, of course, with global tariffs, higher tariffs after that Supreme Court ruling, initially saying 10% yesterday, saying 15% today.
Well, this is basically, for Trump, this is a domestic American political story. This is a story in which he's trying to win the support of his own voters, potentially of some Democrats ahead of the midterms. He's trying to show strength on the international stage. He's trying to project America as the big beast of the international trading system. And in fact, what we see is that it's going to hurt people in Britain a lot. It's probably going to hurt people in America a lot. And we actually see that in this situation he looks pretty weak, I would say. The Supreme Court is a constraint on the president's power. It always has been. And he's now got to work out how he's going to pursue this very aggressive tariff policy within the law in a way that's going to be sustainable for him in the second half of his presidency.
Yeah, I mean, he has got a plan B. He can apply tariffs again, but it's a much slower, much harder process. And, of course, it's limited, isn't it, to, I think, is it 150 days?
Yeah, exactly. And then he has to find another way of extending it or doing something different.
Can't get Congress to agree to it, which
has to get Congress
not going to do.
Well, which they're not going to do. But it's also, I mean, I suppose it's worth noting that this Supreme Court is already stacked in Trump's favour, and 3 of them were actually Trump appointees. So, I'm sure the man is shocked that they dared to defy him, as the best authoritarians are. But it is also worth saying that this is hurting Americans. This is hurting his voter base, and his voter base knows that. When he stands and says, everybody's doing well, the economy's doing great, people are looking at him and thinking, what planet are you on? What world are you talking about? This is not my reality. For most Americans, they will not be experiencing that. And so to protract this conversation about the cost of living and how much people are suffering into the midterms by insisting his continuance of pursuing this policy is quite a weird decision for him, because they are now going to have to go into the midterms talking about this and talking about the cost of living, which is very bad, including for Trump supporters.
OK, we're going to move on to the Sunday Express next. Interestingly, the Sunday Express, one of the few papers, maybe even the only paper, that hasn't got a picture of Andrew on the front. There is a picture of the Princess of Wales laughing in the face of calamity, she says. The headline says there, given the result in the rugby. But tell us about this, Tony. Pretty's mission to save Chagos.
Yes, well, this is the latest attempt by the Conservatives, who are campaigning against Keir Starmer's decision to give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Basically, they've now established that the only way they're going to be able to stop this deal is by getting Donald Trump to collapse it. And we know that the US effectively has a veto on the government's decision to give away those islands, which are currently British overseas territory. And so Priti Patel is taking it upon herself to fly over there and try and sort it all out. And she's going to go and lobby the White House, says the Express, and try and force him into coming out even harder against the deal and making really clear to the government that the US won't support it. This is the latest in a long series of back and forth with Donald Trump over this deal. He backed it, then he didn't back it, then he backed it again. Now his current position is that he's not backing it, but his State Department does. So maybe Priti Patel will be able to work out what exactly is going on while she's over there this week.
As she's making the journey there, he might change his mind again. We don't know.
Yeah.
Rachel?
I mean, we really need to change the language. It's returning the Chagos Islands. It's returning them. Britain took them away from another country as part of a deal to secure the independence of Mauritius from Britain. Mauritius gave up those islands. They do not belong to Britain. All Britain has done is agreed to give them back. And that's, you know, just as things should be. It's a mark of progress. It's, you know, the arc of justice bending forward, all the rest of it. The idea that, you know, Priti Patel is flying out in this to deal with this is little more than, you know, Conservatives picking one of their favourite culture war subjects.
OK, we're running out of time, so I just want to finish very quickly with this story on the front of the Sunday Telegraph. Student loans. The Conservatives want to abolish additional interest on student loans.
That's right. There's been a big issue over the last few weeks, but some students or graduates are paying back interest plus 3%, the rate of inflation plus 3% on their loans, I should say. It means they'll never pay them back, and it's not good value for the taxpayer, argue the Tories. So they're saying that they would cut these loans, meaning that people would pay them off quicker, and they would get the money to do that by cracking down on Mickey Mouse degrees, as they're called, and stopping people taking out low-value degrees, which then end up costing the taxpayer in the long run. They reckon this policy does actually balance the books in the long run and means that graduates are paying back less, especially higher-earning graduates, actually, who ordinarily would pay a lot more.
Yeah, loans written off after 30 years, but the structure means that graduates must earn at least £66,000 just to keep up with interest rates.
I mean, it's eye-watering, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the government behaving like loan sharks, effectively, for students who are, you know, coming out into the job market with this huge loan strapped to their backs. I think that the Conservative solution is quite typically backwards. This isn't about the fact that people can't come out of university, graduate and then find well-paying jobs is to do with the jobs market. It's the jobs market that needs to change. You know, young people are being monumentally shortchanged by the economy at the moment for all kinds of reasons, but one of them is the inability to find well-paid, decent, good jobs when they graduate from universities.
It's so hard. I mean, anecdotally, you know, you speak to young people now, graduates, trying to find work, just so difficult. And to get, you know, to get a job that pays a half-decent wage, especially almost impossible in London now to live in London and get your foot on the employment ladder easily. Really difficult. OK, thank you both very much indeed. We shall chat again after 11 o'clock. Coming up, how Manchester City kept the pressure on Arsenal in the race for the Premier League title.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
These are crazy. It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat.
It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin.
Jerry, any comment on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry?
This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello and thank you for watching The Wrap. Every night of the week, we will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
This cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable?
What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree.
And laughs along the way. Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. You're watching The Wrap on Sky News. Let's get the sport. Here's Paul.
Michael, do you want to give us a clap to the cameras, please?
He's spuggy to his mates, the latest teen sensation of West Ham's endless conveyor belt of football talent.
I got in the first team and I got in the England squad. Everything was rosy.
He always was an intelligent footballer.
West Ham United Football Club.
They're taking the calls at Upton Park. Now West Ham are preparing to sell their most talented midfielder.
We knew that financial pressure Michael was definitely going.
Once Tottenham was involved, there's only one team that I wanted to come to. Jack Santini was the manager. I don't think he really knew who I was.
How did Santini react when you'd signed Michael Carrick?
Yeah, he was not very happy.
It's funny, in sliding doors, a career could have gone down a whole different path.
Martin, he saw the quality of him. I have to play this guy. He was my conductor.
I was so happy at Tottenham.
Now bids come in, his future's uncertain.
And there was a bit of interest. You get whispers and this and that.
I approached Daniel. We'd like to buy Michael. He clearly at that point said he's not for sale.
Daniel was pretty stubborn.
He was a great negotiator.
There's a myth around Daniel that perhaps it's warranted.
Thinking that they're going to go and sign someone else. Every million, 2 million after that was quite a lot.
Did you ever think about walking away?
No, I don't think so. I think the very fact that Alex wanted him, I was confident.
He said, I want between 10 and 12 and ended up getting 18. That was Daniel, and fair play to him.
Play to the middle, please.
I just wanted to come and improve my game and win trophies.
There was resistance from the fans. Why was signing Michael Carrick?
If we hadn't been happy with the sum, we wouldn't have paid it.
Too much, if I'm honest, at that time. It was
Got his shirt number?
16, number 16.
There was no way I was replacing Roy Keane. Totally different characters, players.
There is only one Roy Keane, so don't try to find him.
That didn't bother me one bit.
One of the most important and best midfielders we've had.
I feel just totally privileged. Dreams, really.
He's spuggy to his mates, the latest teen sensation of West Ham's endless conveyor belt of football talent.
I've had sort of a lot of taste of the bench this year, so to get a start at home was fantastic for me.
Carrick! Michael Carrick comes up trumps.
At the end of the day, it's just a game of football. That's the way I look at it, you know, whether it's for the under-19s, the reserves, for the first team, you know, it's still 11 against 11. When I was 13 or 14, I went to about 10, 12, 14 clubs around the country for trials and loved West Ham, just settled at West Ham.
He was a young lad that used to come down during the school holidays from the north east. Newcastle didn't want him. He was in that area but wasn't on their radar. Suddenly I see him go from 5 foot to 6'2". He really did shoot up. He always was an intelligent footballer. He knew the game, could pass through the ball. I loaned him to Swindon, and I remember getting a phone call of his Johnny Frankham, the jockey. He rang me and said, I've just seen the best player I've seen in years at Swindon since Glenn Hoddle played. Your kid Carrick obviously brought him back into the fold at West Ham.
He's been the biggest influence on my career. I know it's hard on managers now to put young players in the team because there's so much pressure, and he gave me my chance, and thankfully I took it. Harry Redknapp was manager at the time, and he go and enjoy yourself was pretty much the message, son, and backed me down to the ground.
Wrapped in an England flag, unconcealed delight shows on the faces of the three West Ham midfielders called up by Sven-Göran Eriksson.
It means everything really to me. Just delighted.
They've all come through our youth team, all deserve it, and I'm so proud and so pleased for them.
In my youth team itself was me and Joe Cole. Rio was 2 years above me. Frank Lampard was 3 years above. You look up to them as if like they're different level, and you kind of catch them and then move on, and people below us like Glenn Johnson's and Jermaine Defoe, they look at you as if they want to be you, and it just family in a tight group look after each other.
They were a great group of kids. They all had
Do stay with us on the wrap. Coming up after 11 o'clock, we'll have more on the fallout after the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. We know that searches are expected to continue at his previous home as the government vows to consider removing him, of course, from the line of succession, currently 8th in line to the throne. Plenty more on that and the rest of the day's news, plus the front pages in a few minutes' time.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Tonight on The Wrap, the police search of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's former home continues, but where will the investigation go next? Well, the focus now turns to those who worked for Andrew, with calls for his former protection officers to come forward with information.
It's key to interview some of these officers who travelled with him extensively for years. It's inconceivable to me, I'm sad to say, that nobody saw anything.
Iran's president vows he won't bow to pressure as a massive US military presence gathers in the Middle East. We need the United States, the words of the mayor of Kyiv as Ukraine prepares to mark 4 years of all-out war. The government sets out plans to make funding for schools fairer, but can they solve a cash crisis in the special education needs sector? And Ireland shatter England's Six Nations hopes after a record win in Twickenham. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Associate Political Editor of the Daily Telegraph, Tony Diver, and journalist and author Rachel Shabby. Plus, we'll take a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, where Andrew is unsurprisingly still making the headlines. Hello, a very good evening. Tony Diver and Rachel Shabby, welcome to both of you. And we start tonight with the police's ongoing investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as they continue to search his former home, Royal Lodge. Let's get a thought from Tony and Rachel as that police investigation continues and is clearly doing a huge amount of damage to the royal family, which seems to be getting worse day by day.
So much damage to the royal family, such that you wonder whether really they're going to be able to sustain this in the long term. And of course, this isn't an arrest over sex allegations, which of course the former Prince Andrew has always denied. However, it is connected to the Epstein files, and it is something when you see that no one is above the law. And I was personally very moved to see the brother and sister-in-law of Virginia Giuffre speak on Sky and elsewhere this week about how they wish that she were here to see this day.
And Tony, once again, on every single front page.
I'm just shocked by the sheer velocity of this story. It's not just comment and speculation. This stuff is actually happening on this story every day, and every single thing that comes out about it is so momentous. The sheer number of investigations that are going on now. I mean, as Rachel says, you can only think of the damage that it does to the royal family as an institution, and where it's all going to end up.
Yeah, we'll talk more in a moment, because detectives are now asking his former close protection officers to come forward with information that could be relevant to their investigation. Adele Robinson has our first report tonight.
Day 3 of the investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And behind the gates of Royal Lodge, his former residence, police searches continue. Days on, still an almost unbelievable sight on a royal property, and activity expected to last here until Monday. The Metropolitan Police has also said it's contacting officers who protected Andrew over the years. They may well have important information, says the former head of Royal Protection.
It's key to interview some of these officers who travelled with him extensively for years. Many of them had been with him for years, and they would have gone to all the 5 residents that we've been talking about in the United States, Virgin Islands, New Mexico, and Florida. So it's inconceivable to me, I'm sad to say, that nobody saw anything.
Andrew, who has always strenuously denied all allegations, was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Over accusations he sent confidential documents to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein when he was a trade envoy. Andrew was stripped of his royal titles last year, with criticism now, too, over the speed of the palace's response.
I would say they've acted a little late, frankly. Where have they been for the last, 20 years in one sense? They should have done it years ago. I understand, possibly, as a family, why you wouldn't want to wash your dirt in public, but there was no internal inquiry, as far as I know, and if there was, where was it? Who did it? So, as I say, there are questions, big questions of the palace, unfortunately.
Separately, 9 UK forces are considering their own investigations after the release of 3 million documents in the Epstein files. Andrew, meanwhile, hasn't been seen since this photograph. After 11 hours of questioning, he left police custody, released under investigation. A significant moment for the royal family, captured for all the wrong reasons. With Andrew's story far from over. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Well, let's get the thoughts of Rachel and Tony then. I mean, just looking at the images, I think you used the word momentous earlier. I mean, it's been an incredible few days. Just seeing the footage of police officers outside the gates at Windsor, in Sandringham as well, and, of course, that photo of Andrew in the back of the car. I mean, these are images that are being seen around the world constantly and will be part of the royal story for decades to come.
Yes, they will. And actually, I've been working on this story for a few days. I've been talking to people, you know, involved in this, in politics and elsewhere. And there was some surprise, actually, at Thames Valley Police's decision to arrest Andrew and bring him in for questioning, which, of course, led to the release of that photograph of him in the back of the car after 11 hours of questioning. It's felt by some people that there wasn't a need necessarily to arrest him. He could have been brought in under caution, as you normally would in a situation like this. He's not especially a flight risk, someone who's going to leave the country. But it's felt that this was done as a show of strength by the police and almost a kind of demonstration that he is equal under the law as everyone else is. And then, of course, you know, that this photograph taken by a press photographer, but a press photographer who was allowed to stand in a place where they were going to be able to get a picture like this. It feels almost as if the system is making a point here, which is to say this man is going to be dealt with in the way that anyone else would be. And a point is being made by doing that.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's have a look at the front of the Sunday Mirror. Their headline, Questions Who Knew What? We'll, of course, have a full rundown of what's in the rest of the papers at 11:30. Rachel, what do you make of all this? There are so many strands now, aren't there?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think if you're brought in, if you're arrested under some suspicion, then it means that police have already gathered significant evidence about you to do that, rather than bring you in to, you know, help police with their inquiries. It's a different category, and there's a different substance of evidence that police have around it, is my understanding of how you'd be arrested, rather than brought in the ways that you described. I think this is... It's going to keep on going, as you say, but I think the circles are going to keep getting wider. So, you know, the royal family, yes. Politicians, yes. The level to which different people knew different things at different times, as the Mirror headline suggests. The idea that police might want to speak to the security detail of the former Prince Andrew to see what they might have seen or known. We're going to look at your story from the front of the Telegraph as well, which pertains to different levels of knowledge and by whom. I mean, I'm not a royalist, but I would imagine that for people who are, this will be quite eroding of that sort of contract the royalists have with the royal family. It would be a huge kind of disgust at what we're watching. And it does make me wonder the degree to which actually the royal family as an institution is in peril now.
Yeah, tell us about your story, Tony, because it is interesting. In the front of the Sunday Telegraph, this is concerning Gordon Brown.
That's right. And Gordon Brown has become very involved in the investigations into Andrew over the last couple of weeks. He's submitted memos to 6 different police forces in which he's given new information to police that he thinks might be pertinent to their inquiries. And so our story into tomorrow's paper is revealing some of the information that he has given to the police. And in particular, he is concerned about Andrew's role as a trade envoy between 2001 and 2011, where he was actually on the government's books as a representative and was flying around the world doing all sorts of trade missions. Brown says he's concerned that Andrew was using RAF charter planes or government-funded jets and that on the side of doing these trade missions, he was meeting business associates. That's something we've known for a while, but what he's suggesting is that he may have used these planes in order to go meet Jeffrey Epstein, and that therefore would mean that the taxpayer was essentially funding a trip by Prince Andrew to meet Jeffrey Epstein. He hasn't got any specific evidence to those claims, but he's saying that that should be a key part of the police investigation. And I think it's important because it shows that, you know, your average Joe, your average voter who is paying tax every month, you know, now has a bit of skin in the game here. You know, this is something about a government representative funded by all of us.
Yeah, of course. OK. Andrew, of course, continues to deny any wrongdoing. OK, we're going to move on to Iran now, where the president has said he will not bow to pressure from world powers, despite the problems it is creating for the country.
We will not bow our heads in the face of these problems. We will try to bring honour and pride to our country. As long as we are alive and we can breathe, we will sacrifice our lives for our country.
Well, there certainly is pressure. The US is building up its military in the region and may strike if Iran fails to agree to a nuclear deal. Then on the domestic front, students spent today protesting to mark 40 days now since thousands of people were killed by security forces during mass demonstrations. Let's get more from our international correspondent, Diana Magnay.
The United States says that it wants to force Iran into a nuclear deal, but talks in Geneva between the two sides last week ended with seemingly little results. The United States wants Iran to stop any kind of uranium enrichment within Iran, and it wants to significantly cut down Iran's ballistic missile program. Iran says the missiles are off the table, it won't talk about them, and that its nuclear program is peaceful anyway. But the foreign minister on Friday morning, Iran's foreign minister, says that he's trying to get together a new draft proposal to take to his superiors, which he would be able to bring to the United States for negotiations within a week or so, he said. Donald Trump, though, later on Friday said that he would be prepared to go for a limited military strike if that would bring Iran to the table. The question is, what would a strike look like, and how could he make sure that what starts off as a limited strike doesn't evolve into something a lot more? He could target the leaders of the Revolutionary Guards and try and take them out, as happened in the 12-day war in June last year. He could target IRGC naval assets or ports, or its underground ballistic missile cities. He could, and he hasn't ruled it out, go for regime change, but that could be extremely long and complicated. Iran, though, would fight back. It has significant capabilities, and that could put US servicemen and women in the region, at the bases all around this region, at risk. It would also mean that Israel is once again at risk from missile attack, as it was in the 12-day war last year. And again, that question, where would it all end? Donald Trump came into power promising the American people that he wouldn't start or go into forever wars. What's not to say that this wouldn't become one?
Diana Magnay there posing many questions, and there are so many questions hanging over all of this. And I suppose the main one for many people watching, I'm sure, is, you know, what is the purpose of this huge military build-up? And it is huge. A huge number of ships, 200 combat aircraft now in the region. Is it regime change? Is it regime collapse? Is it punishment to stop further crackdowns? I mean, what is it?
Well, I think in some senses this is a story that we've seen before. This is an American president, and actually in previous versions of this story it has been Donald Trump having a negotiation with the Iranians about what they're going to do with their weapons programs and especially with their nuclear program. But there's two key bits that have changed. The first one is that in the intervening time, since the last time we heard this story, there has been a huge amount of conflict between Iran and Israel, and the US has been involved in mediating that and discussing with their allies, the Israelis, about what's going to happen next. The second thing is that you have this huge amount of domestic pressure on the Iranian regime, which is far higher than we've ever seen before, and Trump has deliberately allied himself with those people in an attempt to force the Iranians to the table. So what will Trump do? I don't know. My suspicion probably is that the carrier that we see in the seas around Iran and the huge military build-up is more of a negotiating tool than it is preparation for an actual serious military strike, but we've seen limited strikes before from Trump, and I suppose we might see them again. Fundamentally, Trump is a negotiator, and I think what he's trying to do here is bring the Iranians to the table and try and get some kind of agreement over the line on the weapons programme.
Yeah, I mean, it quite literally is gunboat diplomacy, isn't it? But, you know, he's got this huge military build-up. If he doesn't get the deal that he wants or needs, then he's going to need an off-ramp, isn't he, to suddenly pull all this military hardware back. I mean, how do you see it playing out?
I don't know how it's going to play out. I can say that, well, two things. First of all, for people in Iran, this is a nightmare. Not only do they have to deal with a regime that is killing and arresting them in horrendous numbers, but now they're living in fear of a US strike. But the second thing is, I'm not going to defend the Iranian regime, but can I please remind you, we had a deal. We had a great deal with Iran. The US, Iran, other countries had a deal. It was working. Trump tore that up. So from Iran's perspective, why should they trust? Why should they now say, sure, we'll give up our missiles? Having had that deal torn up in front of their eyes, and then having this attack from Israel for no good reason other than that Israel was emboldened and the hawks in the US, you know, whispered in Trump's ear, as they are doing now, and he facilitated it. Why should they trust anything that Trump says? Why should they trust any attempts to negotiate with them, much less, you know, in this gunboat manner that is being offered now?
OK, well, from one potential conflict to an ongoing conflict, Russian President Vladimir Putin famously believed his military could take Kyiv in 3 days, didn't he? But Tuesday will mark 4 years now since his forces invaded Ukraine. There's been little progress in peace talks. In fact, earlier on today, Ukraine attacked an industrial site, they say was a missile factory deep inside Russia, while Moscow keeps up almost nightly drone attacks on the Ukrainian capital. Now, Sky News' Trevor Phillips has been speaking to the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko.
The United States, it's very important. It's critical important. It's life important to have United States offside of Ukraine. If we defend our national interest, if we're talking about the peace, if we're talking about democracy, the Trump administration have to be in the side of Ukraine, because Ukraine is the largest country in Europe, and the stability in the largest country in Europe can bring the stability in the whole region.
But, Mr. Mayor, do you trust President Trump?
I try to trust him, but sometime I'm not understand clearly the messages from President Trump regarding peace in Ukraine. It's peace in Ukraine is very important. It's very important for all the world, but peace in Ukraine definitely have to be not capitulation agreement between Ukraine and Russia.
Trevor Phillips always knows the right questions to ask. I counted how long it took the mayor to answer, 10 seconds, because he was really struggling, wasn't he? He said, when he was asked if he trusts Donald Trump, I try to trust him, but sometimes I don't understand the messages from him regarding peace. And we're now looking at 4 years of this grinding war.
I mean, I try to trust him is a terrific diplomatic answer, because clearly no, he does not. And why would anyone, as we were talking about before when it comes to Iran? But yeah, we're coming up to 4 years. And Trump, I mean, it's very hard to forget that image of him and J.D. Vance, the vice president, with Zelensky, and them humiliating him at the press conference that they had together. I think it was last year. I lose track of time in Trump land. But that kind of humiliation and that kind of constant willingness to push Ukraine into signing some kind of surrender document has been very much a theme of Trump's approach to this since he came to office. And, of course, it's no surprise that Ukraine and Ukrainians are deeply concerned about that approach.
Yeah, trilateral meetings taking place in Geneva, but yet again, they're not really showing much progress.
No, they're not. And in the meantime, even though we'd all like this war to be over very quickly, the rest of NATO has to work out what's going to happen if it's not. And actually, that is the conversation that's going on so often in European capitals, is not wishful thinking and hoping that the negotiations are going to come to a speedy end, but working out what the contingency plan is if the Americans decide to withdraw more support and Britain and others are left to pick up the tab. In fact, John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has written for us in tomorrow's Telegraph, in which he says he would like to be the Defence Secretary that sends troops to Ukraine, because Britain has always said that they will only send troops to Ukraine after a ceasefire is signed. And that kind of tension between muscular support from the West, but also a strong, strong desire for peace, I think is the line that Western leaders are trying to walk at the moment.
Yeah, just a final thought, Rachel, on this. I suppose many will say that the West took its eye off the ball when we saw Putin's increasing aggression, his annexation of Crimea back in 2014, and that is the situation that Ukraine now is having to deal with. And really, over the last 4 years, we still haven't sort of resolved that question, have we, that issue?
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think that we did take our eye off the ball. And I hear Ukrainians and others in that region say that all the time. Of, look, this didn't start 4 years ago. We were dealing with iterations of this back in 2014. And I think perhaps people were unclear as to what Putin's intentions were back then. But looking back, yeah, it seems pretty clear the kind of expansionist and invasion-prone approach that he has to his neighbouring countries.
Interesting. OK, well, you can, of course, hear the full interview with Vitaly Klitschko on Sunday morning with Trevor Phillips tomorrow from 8:30. He'll also be joined by the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, Reform UK's Treasury spokesperson, Robert Jenrick, and the author and historian, Andrew Morton. That's all from tomorrow, 8:30. Coming up on The Wrap, we're going to take a look at how the government is reforming education funding. Don't go away.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Hello again, welcome back to The Wrap. Now the government has set out its plans to reform school funding in an effort to boost results for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. As it stands, only 44% of kids who receive free school meals pass their English and maths GCSEs at grade 4 or above. Now that's compared with 70% of children who come from more affluent backgrounds. So let's take a look at what the government planned to do about it. Well, the new model would look at family income and where a child lives to determine the amount of funding. It also sets a new attendance target equivalent to 100,000 more pupils in school by 2029. And there are incentives for head teachers of up to £15,000 to work in parts of the country where they're needed most. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says our schools have made great strides in recent decades, yet for too long many children in our country have been let down by a one-size-fits-all system, denied opportunity because they're poor or because they have additional needs. Our schools' white paper presents the blueprint for opportunity for the next generation with an education system that truly serves every child, whatever their needs and wherever in the country they grow up. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been investigating the changes already being made to the education system. Here's a little bit of one of his recent reports.
Hi, guys. Hello. Hello.
We took Ed Davey to the Rise School, the father of a disabled child and the most outspoken on this subject in Westminster.
So I'm really keen to know, is it a good school?
There's less people in a classroom and obviously the teachers understand you more because obviously you've got the support that you need and you're not just get pushed away to the side.
Have you noticed a difference in how you feel?
Very different, yeah.
How does this school compare to where you were before?
Special schools focus on individual students instead of the whole class.
They make the work our level.
The system's in crisis for many reasons, and it's really important that we see a root and branch reform of the current system. There are many children who come into the system where the parents want to get the best for their child, and that's absolutely right. But the scale of the demand has grown. If I just look at my own county, we've gone from about 5,500 children with educational health and care plans to over 11,000 in a very short period of time.
Tony and Rachel still here. Tony, it's interesting, this idea about free school meals, because it's been a system that's been used for a long time, but this is quite radical, but maybe makes sense.
Yeah, well, the government's saying here is at the moment you either receive free school meals or you don't, and if you do, then you get free school meals, but you also get lots of other benefits. And the government's saying actually having a totally binary system is not necessarily a good idea, and actually lots of people have different needs. We know that. Lots of children need different things from the state. They need help in the classroom and elsewhere. And so perhaps grading that support so that it's reliant on household income rather than a sort of fixed cut-off is going to help people more, and perhaps means that some people at the top end who don't need quite so much still get a little bit of help, but people at the bottom get a lot. It's kind of, when you think about it, surprising that they don't already do it like that, I would say.
Yeah, just less binary, and it would sort of make sense. I mean, there's a lot to unpick here, Rachel. What's your sort of headline thoughts?
I mean, I think you should just give everyone free school meals and be done with it, because grading is going to cost more money than it's worth to figure out where everybody fits and how. Just give everybody free school meals, the end. I do think that it's good that the government is targeting schools and the inequality gap. It is horrendous in this country. It's widened even further over the last decade, and I think, of course, COVID would have made it worse because of the disparities in access to the sort of things that made homeschooling possible. But I also think it's worth mentioning that if you want to tackle inequality at school, then just tackle inequality, right? Because if you're doing all these things that are great and will help school children from deprived backgrounds when they're at school, but then they go back to not at school and they're still living in awful conditions of inequality. They still might have parents who are working God knows how many jobs and still not able to make ends meet. They're still living in the middle of a cost of living crisis. They may still be going hungry with the other meals outside of school. There may be all sorts of other things going on that do affect attainment other than just being at school or not. So tackle inequality, full stop. I know I keep banging this drum, but it is pretty bad in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, well, we'll find out more on Monday when the government launches that officially. Right now, though, let's take a look at the front pages of Sunday's papers. We're going to begin with The Observer, leading with the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the fallout for the monarchy, zooming in on that picture of him in the back of the car leaving the police station. The Daily Mirror also has Andrew's arrest and the calls for an inquiry into what they're describing as a conspiracy of silence around Andrew's relationship with Epstein. The front of tomorrow's Sunday People also reports on the demands for an inquiry by no other than the royal family's former head of protection. The Sun's headline says Parliament should investigate whether Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson have committed treason. Sliding in the Sunday Telegraph, saying former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has demanded a police investigation into whether Andrew used taxpayer-funded jets and RAF bases to meet up with Jeffrey Epstein. While the Daily Star reports on the comments from a former participant of the TV show SAS Who Dares Wins, calling Andrew arrogant. And there's an exclusive from the Sunday Express there reporting Dame Priti Patel has flown to Washington on a mission to stop the Chagos Island deal. Let's have a look in a bit more detail then at some of those front pages. Tony, why don't we start with the front of the Sunday People. Ex-royal cop, we need an inquiry.
Yeah, that's right, and this is coming from a former head of Royal Protection who is arguing that this scandal now needs to be properly investigated with a full statutory inquiry. That obviously would take a very long time. We've seen the COVID inquiry, for instance, has got running at the moment. It's still running these years later. But I guess the feeling on this story now is that the revelations about Andrew that are coming out are still coming through thick and fast, and there are really deep institutional questions about his role within both the monarchy and the government, and how these stories came about. And so what it will be interesting to see is whether or not that gets picked up on the political end, because, of course, inquiries cannot be launched by former Royal Protection officers. They can only be launched by the government. So if the government comes under pressure on this early next week, then we might see a bit of movement.
Yeah, and we've discussed this a great deal tonight, but just a final thought, Rachel, from you before we move on.
I completely agree. I mean, I think this is just going to get bigger and bigger. We've only seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of the Epstein files. The ones released, we've only seen a small percentage of those, and of course, there's even more.
I think people forget that, don't they? Almost that, you know, we had this huge release of the files a few weeks ago now, and yet journalists and others are still going through them, and they've only really got to the tip of the iceberg of the ones that have been released.
Exactly, and then there's 2.5 million more that have not been released, so this is going to go on and on.
Yeah. OK, let's move on to something we haven't discussed yet. This is on the front of the Sunday Times. Why don't you kick off, Rachel, on this? Britain's top NATO officials warning the government that uncertainty about defence spending and the speed of rearmament risks undermining the country's status as a leading member of NATO.
I mean, well, they would, wouldn't they? I mean, of course, NATO chiefs are going to say, give NATO more money. World's most surprising headline ever. I think ever so often you do see these headlines from various defence officials saying, give us more money. And why wouldn't they?
Good point. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard a military chief saying, we've got more than enough, thanks.
Yeah, give us less, cut our spending.
What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, there is a serious point here, which is that Keir Starmer has said that he wants to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by next April, and then go even further and go up to 3.5% in the next Parliament. We don't know where that money's coming from. We've got the Ministry of Defence is warning that they've got a £28 billion black hole. That's even from a standing start, not even factoring in these increases. And that's for all sorts of reasons, but higher pay for people who work in the military, problems with procurement, inflation, there's all these problems. And so there is a disconnect, I think, between the political rhetoric on defence in this country and what is actually going on the ground. How much money do we have and how much firepower do we have? And these Britain's representatives in NATO are warning that our ability to influence what the organisation does and our standing with our peers within NATO is being affected by what they basically see as a lack of commitment from the government. I think that's a serious problem.
OK. And then finally, this is quite an interesting take in The Sun on the story that we were discussing earlier. The Sun's take is that this is class warfare, the school funding reform idea. So Keir Starmer being accused of waging class warfare over his radical plan. Is this fair, Tony?
Well, interesting quote here from Ian Duncan Smith, of course, former Conservative leader and pension secretary. He says that Labour's now gone well beyond Blair and Brown and it's become a Corbyn party. I do think that the government's rhetoric on education is probably further to the left than it is in most other policy areas, and I think you probably expect that from a Labour government. But as we were just saying, you know, we've just been through the policy, and actually I wouldn't say it looks like class warfare to me. I would say it looks fairly technocratic, but it's aimed at getting the support to the people who need it the most. So, you know, but clearly good work from the Tories. Look, page 8 lead in The Sun for those comments.
I mean, I do think we are riven by class inequalities, and as a non-royalist, I think that is one of the reasons to get rid of the royal family, because they are the cherry on top of this class system and further entrench it. It's hard to remember that Britain used to be one of the most equal societies in Europe in the 70s. It is now the most unequal. That is to do with class. I have no problem with class warfare or calling it that if we end up with less rampant inequality in this country, less poverty, less deprivation.
OK. All right. Thank you both very much indeed. When we come back, plenty more stories in tomorrow's papers. Don't go away.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Hello again. Welcome back. Time for a closer look at what is making tomorrow's papers. We're having a look at some of the insides. Inside the Times, Rachel, loan rate to be cut to help graduates. I mean, it is a huge amount of money, isn't it, that the students are paying back just in interest alone?
It's eye-watering. It's appalling that we're doing this to young graduates who, you know, should not be saddled with this amount of debt just as they're entering the workforce. 66,000 is the average annual amount a graduate must earn before they can start to pay off any debt. But, yeah, because it's 3% plus the rate of inflation, it's actually now completely unsustainable for them, and they're not actually managing to even make a dent in these student loans. I think it's been compared to being a loan shark. The government is being a loan shark. So, yeah, any attempts to slash them, good.
It does feel like it's got a bit out of hand, doesn't it, the whole system?
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is all tied to the rate of inflation to some extent.
Yeah.
But actually, we're seeing, you know, people on the top rates now are paying 6.2% a year on those loans, and we're talking about big balances here with people who, at the beginning of their careers, are not earning very much money and are paying back at a rate of 9% of their salary. So over someone's long career, especially if they don't get up to earn over £66,000, which is many graduates, these people will not pay off these loans. And so it doesn't really work like a loan. It doesn't work like you go to the bank and you take out a loan and then you pay it back month to month like you would do with a mortgage. This is effectively an extra tax and not a particularly well-structured tax. So the Conservatives are saying we'll just scrap that extra bit of interest, we'll let everyone pay it off quicker, and they say they would fund it by stopping Mickey Mouse degrees, which are costing the taxpayer extra money by sending people off to university who then don't get graduate-level jobs. Yeah,
£66,000, a huge amount of money. The average annual amount a graduate must earn before they can start to pay off any debt. OK, let's talk about something a bit lighter. You have got a cat, did you say? Or
two cats.
Two cats. You are cat and dogless?
I walk a borrowed dog.
You walk a borrowed dog. OK,
yeah.
Well, Claudia Winkleman is obsessed with her beloved spaniel, so much so it sleeps in bed with her every night and declares herself officially in love with dogs. She's begged Channel 4 bosses to be part of the team for hosting Crufts. She says she kisses her paws, this is the dog's paws, and we can no longer go anywhere without him. Rachel, I mean, is it... I'll confess something to you in a minute, but is it ever right for people to share their bed with their dog or cat?
Yeah. I quite often am on Insta looking at the dogs of Insta, just, you know, as de-stress from the news. And one of the memes that keeps going round is how people who get dogs is always like, oh, we'll never let them on the bed. And the next thing you know, they're snoring their head off on the bed. It's just one of those things that every dog owner seems to end up doing. And why not?
Well, the cats come on the bed, but the cats do what they want, of course.
Yeah.
You can't control cats.
Yeah.
Their favourite thing, actually, is to walk over you while you're asleep.
Or sort of sit on your face. We've always had dogs, spaniels as well, and I was exactly like you. I said, if we're going to get a spaniel, that's fine, but he lives downstairs. He's never allowed upstairs. You know, we'll love him, but he's got his own space. I've got my own space. Within a week, of course. So at one stage we had two spaniels and a cat all on the bed at the same time. And it's not great. It's not great. They all snore, including my wife. And it makes life very difficult. But you were saying that Claudia Winkleman even looks stylish when she's out walking the dog.
Can we just appreciate how well-styled she is for a dog walk?
Even in her wellies.
Even in her wellies, she looks great.
Yeah, she
and
really
so does the dog.
Yes, I'll be interested to hear what people think about that, sleeping in the same bed as your dog. Let's finally look at, also inside the Sun, actually, the washout winter is coming to an end, ladies and gentlemen. It's really happening. There are parts of Cornwall, Tony, where it has rained every day this year.
To be honest with you, it's felt like that in London.
Yeah.
It's been so utterly miserable. this start of the year. In fact, it felt today that it started to warm up for the first time for a while. But, I mean, I hope these forecasters are right. It looks like, 14 degrees, say, these forecasters, so that would be welcome, I would say. And hopefully we'll just stop having to carry an umbrella with you everywhere you go, or worse, forgetting and then getting soaked.
Yeah, I mean, it has been relentless, hasn't it? I mean, I've been trying to sweep up the leaves in my garden since before Christmas, and I just keep telling myself I can't do it if it's raining. You can't sweep up wet leaves.
Can't.
So they've been there for 3 months.
It's probably composting nicely. But, yeah, we've had more rain than the 30-year average, and boy, does it feel like it. It has been relentless, and so I am delighted by the idea that we might be getting between 10 and 14 degrees this week.
Yeah, it's going to get milder, isn't it? Senior Met Office meteorologist Greg Dewhurst saying temperatures throughout next week by day look like they will be between 10 and 14 Celsius. Any sunnier breaks, maybe it's going to get to 15 Celsius in the south. I know, it's exciting. And this winter saw Britain get 70% of its typical sunshine, so only 70%.
We've been robbed.
We've been robbed. Poor Claudia Winkelman, she'll be walking her dog in the rain, in muddy puddles, for a little bit longer. It's been a pleasure tonight. Thank you both very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you again soon. Coming up after the break, the sport, including how Manchester City kept the pressure on Arsenal in the race for the Premier League title.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
Is it crazy? It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat. It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin. Jerry, any comment on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland. Sky News, get the full story first.
Thank you for watching The Wrap every night of the week. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
This cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way. Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Hello again. Let's get your Saturday sport with Paul.
Michael, do you want to give us a clap to all the cameras,
He's spuggy to his mates, the latest teen sensation of West Ham's endless conveyor belt of football talent.
I got in the first team and I got in the England squad. Everything was rosy.
He always was an intelligent footballer.
West Ham United Football Club.
They're taking the calls at Upton Park. Now West Ham are preparing to sell their most talented midfielder.
We knew that financial pressure of Michael was definitely going.
Once Tottenham was involved, there's only one team that I wanted to come to.
Jack Santini was the manager. I don't think he really knew who I was.
How did Santini react when you signed Michael Carrick?
Yeah, he was not very happy.
It's funny, his sliding doors, a career could have gone down a whole different path.
Martin, he saw the quality of him.
I have to play this guy. He was my conductor.
I was so happy at Tottenham.
Now bids come in, his future's uncertain.
And there was a bit of interest. You get whispers and this and that.
I approached Daniel. We'd like to buy Michael. He clearly at that point said he's not for sale.
Daniel was pretty stubborn.
He was a great negotiator.
There's a myth around Daniel that perhaps it's warranted.
Thinking that they're going to go and sign someone else. Every million, 2 million after that was quite a lot.
Did you ever think about walking away?
No, I don't think so. I think the very fact that Alex wanted him, I was confident.
He said, I want between 10 and 12 and ended up getting 18. That was Daniel and fair play to him.
Play to the middle, please. I just wanted to come and improve my game and win trophies.
There was resistance from the fans. Why was signing Michael Carrick?
If we hadn't been happy with the sum, we wouldn't have paid it.
Too much, if I'm honest, at that time. It was
Got his shirt number?
16, number 16.
There was no way I was replacing Roy Keane. Totally different characters, players.
There is only one Roy Keane, so don't try to find him.
That didn't bother me one bit.
One of the most important and best midfielders we've had.
I feel just totally privileged. Dreams, really.
He's spuggy to his mates, the latest teen sensation of West Ham's endless conveyor belt of football talent.
I've had sort of a lot of taste of the bench this year, so to get a start at home was fantastic for me.
Carrick! Michael Carrick comes up trumps.
At the end of the day, it's just a game of football. That's the way I look at it, you know, whether it's for the under-19s, the reserves, for the first team, you know, it's still 11 against 11.
When I was 13 or 14, I went to about 10, 12, 14 clubs around the country for trials and loved West Ham, just settled at West Ham.
He was a young lad that used to come down during the school holidays from the North East. Newcastle didn't want him. He was in that area but wasn't on their radar. Suddenly I see him go from 5 foot to 6'2". He really did shoot up. He always was an intelligent footballer. He knew the game, good passer of the ball. I loaned him to Swindon, and I remember getting a phone call of his Johnny Frankham, the jockey. He rang me and said, I've just seen the best player I've seen in years at Swindon since Glenn Hoddle played. Your kid Carrick obviously brought him back into the fold at West Ham.
He's been the biggest influence on my career, and I was hard on managers now to put young players in the team because there's so much pressure, and he gave me my chance, and thankfully I took it.
Harry Redknapp was manager at the time, and he go and enjoy yourself was pretty much the message, son, and backed me down to the ground.
Wrapped in an England flag, unconcealed delight shows on the faces of the 3 West Ham midfielders called up by Sven-Göran Eriksson.
It means everything really to me. Just delighted.
They've all come through our youth team, all deserve it, and I'm so proud and so pleased for them.
In my youth team itself was me and Joe Cole. Rio was 2 years above me. Frank Lampard was 3 years above. You look up to them as if like they're different level, and you kind of catch them and then move on, and people below us like Glenn Johnson's and Jermaine Defoe, they look at you as if they want to be you, and it just family in a tight group look after each other.
They were a great group of kids. They all had fantastic attitudes. Every one of them want to do extra after training. They want to practice. They all want to be footballers. Not a minute's problem. They'd be on a par with the Man United group. That fantastic.
Let's head towards midnight with a look at the forecast.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
An Atlantic flow will keep it mild over the next few days, but will bring further rain and strong winds, with the rain concentrated in the northwest. There'll be a breezy, mild start for most tomorrow, although chilly in the far north, and it will be fine for many parts in central England. Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland can expect some locally heavy showers, however, while southern Britain will see more general rain moving in. That rain will clear east through the morning, finally leaving Kent soon after midday and leaving most southern parts dry with long spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, expect sunny spells and blustery showers, although the showers will be fairly isolated east of the Grampians. It's going to be very mild again, but windy. Showers will spread to Wales, northern England and the northern Midlands later, but most southern parts look like staying fine into the evening. Monday will bring more showers to northern Britain and some more general rain to central parts, locally heavy in the west.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
That was The Wrap. Thank you very much for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News at midnight, including the news that searches continue at the former home of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.